It wasn't just a sweep for the Orioles in Tampa Bay. Oh, no, no. It was a mop as the O's go to St. Pete and take all four from the Rays. I'll recap the series finale coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Orioles fans, today is Tuesday, June 11th, 2024, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap the Orioles' 5-2 victory over the Tampa Bay Rays on Monday night that completed the mop, winning all four games at the Trop between Friday and Monday. I'll get you the 5 things you need to know from the Monday win, including a dominant performance from Corbin Burnes and big days from Gunnar Henderson and Ryan O'Hearn. Then we'll get to some Orioles news and notes about some guys who have been dealing with some injuries like Dean Kremer, Jorge Mateo, and others. And finally, at the end of the pod, make sure to stick around. I will announce the winner of the Great Eights hoodie for the giveaway that we announced on the pod last week. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedonmlb and use code all lowercase lockedonmlb for a first deposit match up to $100. So we begin with an Orioles victory. Final score from the Trop on Monday night, the Orioles 5 and the Tampa Bay Rays 2, one of those odd wraparound 4-game series that lasts Friday through Monday, and the Orioles complete the mop, a term coined by friend of the show, Jordan Schusterman of Cespedes Family Barbecue. Hey, when you get a 4-game sweep, it's got to be bigger than a sweep. It is a mop, and that is what the Orioles have done to the Rays. Their second mop of the year, of course, also mopped the White Sox in Chicago earlier this year, but this one a lot bigger, a better team, and a divisional opponent as well. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from the Orioles series finale win on Monday night in Tampa. And the first thing you need to know is Corbin Burnes was just rolling through the Rays order in this one. Burnes goes 7 strong innings, allowing 2 runs, but both of them were unearned. So 0 earned runs over 7 on 5 hits. He struck out 6, walked 1, and allowed a home run on just 92 pitches. Only 7 hard hit balls in 7 innings by Rays hitters against him. And Burnes now has a 2.08 ERA in an Oriole uniform. The start on Monday night made it 10 consecutive quality starts for Corbin Burnes. Now, you can argue how important is a quality start. It's anything 6 or more innings, 3 earned runs or less. If you're going 6 innings and 3 earned runs every start, you're going to have a quality start every start, but you're also going to have a 4.50 ERA. So people argue how great of a stat is that? But the 10 consecutive quality starts is the longest active streak in Major League Baseball right now. So it certainly means something. And the all-time Orioles record is 12 consecutive quality starts. That was done by Jim Palmer back in 1975. Ever heard of him? And hat tip to Jacob Calvin Meyer of the Baltimore Sun for posting that little factoid. But yeah, what a run the Corbin Burnes is on right now. And again, both of the runs were unearned in this game. He easily could have been 7 shutout. It was 2 runs he gave up in the second inning that gave the Rays a 2-1 lead. He had retired the first 2 batters. He had gotten Jose Caballero to hit a pretty soft ground ball to second base, and Jordan Westburg just made an error. You rarely see Jordan Westburg make an error, but he kind of botches the play at second base, and then the very next batter, Alex Jackson, hits a 2-run homer dead center off it was a good cutter from Burnes. It was right on the outside corner. Jackson just drove it to right center for a 2-run shot to give the Rays a 2-1 lead. Now, the annoyance is, oh my God, Alex Jackson is arguably the Rays' backup catcher, and he just hit his first home run of the year. Well, he hasn't been to the majors that long this year. And also, despite the fact that Jackson hasn't really worked out, he was a former top prospect, and he hit a lot of home runs in the minor leagues. It's a guy with power. And also, that was a really good swing on a really good pitch. Just got to tip your cap to a big league hitter right there. But again, if Westburg gets him out of the inning, he doesn't even face Alex Jackson at that point. And he was just dotting the cutter once again. I mean, he used that pitch much more than anything else, as we have learned to expect from Corbin Burnes. 42 of his 92 pitches were cutters. He was actually throwing it harder than usual. Cutter was averaging 96, usually averages 95, and he was up to 98 multiple times with the cutter, which is very impressive to see from Corbin Burnes, but a 61% zone percentage on that cutter, and a lot of those pitches were on the black. It was just a heavy fastball approach overall. His number 2 pitch was the sinker, so he was really going with the hard stuff, mostly low in the zone against the Rays hitters, and that approach worked. It's the 4th time this year Burnes has gone 7 innings. He hasn't gone more than 7 innings any times this year, but his 4th start of 7 innings, and 3 of his last 4 starts have been 7 innings of work. Quite frankly, he's getting better as the season goes on, and for my money, is the current front runner here in June for the AL Cy Young Award. Second thing you need to know from the Orioles win over the Rays on Monday night is that when James McCann gets multiple hits, the Orioles always win. And what did James McCann do on Monday? Get multiple hits. Now, Brandon Hyde, when asked about it before the game, told the media that, James McCann is not Burnes' personal catcher, but Adley Rutschman, after starting all 3 games behind the plate this weekend, which generally doesn't happen, got a full day off on Monday, wasn't even DHing, and McCann got the start to catch Corbin Burnes for the 5th time in a row. But Brandon Hyde pushing the right buttons. Not only did McCann call a great game behind the plate, he contributed on offense as McCann at the dish picks up 2 hits, also a walk in this one out of the 9-hole, going 2 for 3 in this game with a couple of hard hit balls. And the Orioles, since they acquired James McCann before the 2023 season, are now 9-0 over the last 2 seasons when James McCann has a multi-hit game. 9-0. If you get 2 knocks from McCann, you are winning the baseball game. He hit a solo home run in his first at-bat that tied in the 3rd inning off of Rays starter Ryan Pepiot. Just smoked the ball to left field, 106 off the bat, 401 feet on a hanging breaking ball. Then he had a hard hit single in the 5th the other way, ended up scoring a run. And that was what was the go-ahead run in the 5th as well. And then he walked in the 9th inning, didn't end up scoring a run, but he walked and he stole second for his first stolen base of the year. Surprisingly, McCann stole 3 bases last year in his first year as an Oriole, but got a crazy huge jump in the 9th inning and ended up stealing second off of Chris Davinsky, which is pretty impressive. Just a nice overall day from James McCann. And again, he gets 2 hits. The Orioles do not lose. Now, there's another guy who usually gets a lot more hits, and that is Ryan O'Hearn. And the third thing you need to know from the O's win Monday is that while James McCann had 2 hits, Ryan O'Hearn provided the big hits in this game for the Orioles. He had the difference maker against Pepiot in the top of the 5th inning, batting with 2 outs and runners on 1st and 3rd in a 2-2 game. O'Hearn delivers, gets a changeup at the knees, ropes it down the right field line, hits it right on the chalk, and it rolls into the corner, scoring both McCann and Gunnar Henderson on a 2-run double to give the Orioles a 4-2 lead. Also rolled an RBI single into right field with 2 outs in the 7th to extend the O's lead to 5-2. A couple of ribbies, and despite what was for O'Hearn a 3-for-4 day with 3 RBIs, only one of those 3 hits was a hard hit ball. Usually for O'Hearn, it's like a 1-for-4 with 4 hard hit balls, and he gets unlucky. Honestly, I think he'll rather take the flip side with the 3 hits and help his team win this game, which he once again did on Monday. Fourth thing you need to know from the win that clinched the mop for the Orioles over the Rays is that while James McCann had some hits, Ryan O'Hearn had the big hits, and Gunnar Henderson seemingly provided the rest of the offense for the Orioles. And he got things started quicker than anyone else can, hitting his 7th leadoff home run on the season and hitting it on the first pitch of the game from Pepiot. 7th leadoff homer of the year, 21st home run overall for Henderson. Gets a first pitch fastball down the middle to open the game and just crushes it to dead center field. 106 off the bat. 430 feet for Gunnar's longest home run of his 21 so far this season. Just mashed it off the big batter's eye in center field. But he was not done after that, as Henderson ended up putting together a 3-for-5 day at the plate with a couple of hard hit balls, now up to a 974 OPS on the season. He had an infield single in the 5th and came around to score. Then he just kind of flicked and chopped a double the other way down the third base line in the 7th, and also came around to score with 3 runs scored in this game. Another great day for Gunnar. And the 5th and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' 5-2 win over the Rays on Monday night that completed this mop is that the bullpen just came in with their top 2 guys and finished things off. Yennier Cano got the 8th inning. I thought there was a chance Corbin Burnes would go back out there at just 92 pitches threw 7, but I think he felt he was good to go. And Cano went out there and threw some more four-seamers. After throwing 9 four-seamers the other day, the most ever in his career, he threw 7 more on Monday night, the second most he's ever thrown, just behind his last appearance. Also threw a lot of sinkers, and although he issued a 2-out walk, Cano did put together a scoreless 8th inning with a couple of strikeouts, and that walk that he allowed was his first walk in the month of June, which is nice to see. This is now 7 consecutive scoreless appearances for Yennier Cano, which is something you absolutely love to see. And then Craig Kimbrell came on in the 9th. Good save situation for him, 3-run lead. His command was a little shaky. He walked the leadoff batter. He got behind the next couple of hitters. He went 3-2 to Caballero. He went 2-0 to the next batter before getting the strikeout to end the game. Excuse me, got 3-2 to Palacios, then got 2-0 to Caballero before getting him to pop out with 2 outs to end the inning. But all in all, it was a 0 in the 9th. It was another save. It was 2 strikeouts for Craig Kimbrell. And the Oriole bullpen finished things off. They continued this marvelous run. And the O's end this really, really important ALE stretch. It was 3 at home against the Rays, 4 games at the Blue Jays, 4 games at the Rays. And they come out on top with, flying colors in this stretch. You go 8-3 in that stretch of games against your division opponents. And you can add in the series before. They also played the Red Sox. They won that series too. That's 10-4, 14 straight against your division, 10-4 record, a mop on the road against the Rays. And that this weekend and Monday was the first time in Orioles history. Now, the Rays didn't come around to the late 90s, but the first time in Orioles history that they have swept, or more so mopped, a 4-game series at Tropicana Field against the Rays. Team continuing to make history, and they just continue to play great baseball. Now 43-22 through 65 games this season. As I'm recording, Yankees do have the lead in the 6th inning in Kansas City, so it looks like the O's will stay 2.5 back, but they are right on the tails of the Yankees as well. And it's an Orioles team that has dealt with some injuries this year. We know they've got some guys, Felix Bautista, John Means, Tyler Wells out for the year, but some of their other injured guys are progressing well and potentially returning soon for the Orioles. We'll talk about all of those names: Dean Kremer, Jorge Mateo, Austin Hayes, Kyle Stowers, and more, and what the injury status is. We'll get to that coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Ibotta. Now, spring has been here and summer's coming around the corner. And so it's out with the old and in with the new. But don't splurge on anything new without getting cash back in return when you use Ibotta. Ibotta is a free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop on hundreds of items, from groceries to beauty supplies to toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year, and you can join the over 50 million users and earn cash back every time you shop from over 2,700 brands and retailers, including all your favorite grocery stores, Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. And right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONMLB. And the episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by PrizePicks, which, for my money, is the most fun and exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. At PrizePicks, you could turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. You can make a PrizePicks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. All you need to do is pick more or less on anywhere from 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you're locked in. It's super easy. Add your favorite players from the diamond to your PrizePicks lineup, whether it's RBIs, strikeouts, first inning runs, whatever. Take your pick, more or less, add them to the lineup. It is that simple. You just look at something like, okay, Shohei Ohtani, maybe more or less than 0.5 homers. He hits a lot of homers. Maybe you go with more. It's that easy to make a pick. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100 at Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. So the Orioles completed the mop over the Rays on Monday night, winning it 5-2 to win all four at the Trop before they come back home tonight against the Braves. And maybe when they come back home, this team will get a little bit healthier. We got a good amount of updates on some injured and banged up guys from Brandon Hyde before the game on Monday, and wanted to run through a few of them here in this segment. Let's start with Kyle Stowers, who did start on Sunday, did not play in the games, or did start Saturday, I should say, didn't play in the games Sunday or Monday. And the Orioles are kind of calling him day-to-day at this point. He has a sore wrist, kind of fell on it, bent it back awkwardly while he was making a sliding catch in left field in Toronto back in that series against the Blue Jays. Hasn't been 100% since then. Brandon Hyde said he could have been available potentially off the bench on Monday night, so we'll see if the O's try to get him back in the lineup here on Tuesday. But it's good to know, he could be available off the bench and is most likely going to avoid any kind of IL stint. The other guy that's banged up right now, but is on the roster, is Austin Hayes. And if you've noticed, he hasn't played a whole lot either, but he played Saturday, came into the game as a pinch hitter, did not start. He actually hasn't started since Thursday afternoon in Toronto. He got hit by a pitch in the ribs, took a 97-mile-per-hour fastball there. And then apparently after he sat out a day or two, his back started to tighten up. So Hayes dealing with a couple of things. Hyde said a similar thing for Hayes, like he could have been potentially available off the bench if the O's needed him on Monday night. They ended up not needing Hayes or Stowers in that win, but same kind of thing, just keep an eye on the lineups these next couple of days. Hopefully Hayes is feeling better, and both guys who are swinging it well, especially Hayes coming off the last IL stint for the calf injury, is swinging the bat much, much better. And, we'll see if maybe the Orioles can get either of them into the lineup. I mean, this lineup's been working well, but they're still not at the point where they want to play Patrick Mull every single day. So that kind of opens up that spot for Hayes or Stowers to get left field at Oriole Park. Now, it is a lefty and Max Fried on the mound tonight, which means you won't see Stowers. But if Hayes is good to go, we'll know around 4 o'clock today when the lineup comes out, because the O's are going to want Hayes in there against the left-handed starter if he is healthy. Now, speaking of guys that the Orioles want in there against left-handed starters, another one is Jorge Mateo, who's been out for about a week now after suffering that really, really odd concussion last Sunday in Baltimore against the Rays when he was reaching for a bat weight in the on-deck circle, and Cedric Mullins accidentally knocked him in the back of the head with his bat. Luckily, Mateo was wearing his helmet when it happened, but Mateo immediately left the game. He was placed on the 7-day concussion IL on Monday, and technically, he was eligible to come off the IL on Monday. Now, the Orioles did not activate him. He is still on the injured list as of recording here after the game on Monday night. But Brandon Hyde, first of all, Mateo was seen taking grounders at the Trop on Sunday. And then Hyde said before the game on Monday that Mateo would be activated in, quote, the next few days. He said it could be tomorrow. It could be a couple days after that. That means they're still trying to make sure he's okay. And trust me, I am fully on board with erring on the side of caution when it comes to concussions. It's not just a football thing. A lot of people's careers and a lot of other sports have been ended by a concussion issue as well. You want to give Mateo as much time and maybe even lean towards more time that he needs to come back from this. But also, you'd love to get him back Tuesday because he's been mashing lefty, and you'd love to get him out there against the lefty Max Fried. So we'll see if that's something the Orioles can do. Again, if not, you would think by this weekend at the latest when the Phillies come into town, the O's will have Jorge Mateo back. And again, I mentioned it on Monday's episode, but even though Connor Norby has swung the bat well, I just think in terms of roster composition, when Mateo does come back, it just makes the most sense that most likely Connor Norby would just be optioned back to AAA when that move is made. But again, he showed enough where if the Orioles need another infielder again before Holiday comes back, they can certainly go to Norby. Now, Dean Kremer, the other guy who's on the injured list right now for the Orioles, and they showed some video of it during the Masson broadcast on Monday, but Dean Kremer threw another bullpen on the field, well, in the bullpen, but which is on the field at Tropicana Field before Monday's game, with the Orioles pitching coaches behind him watching and taking notes. Brandon Hyde said, and this was reported by Rock Cabaco, that Dean Kremer will most likely go on a rehab assignment. You don't know what exactly that means, but it sounds like at least one rehab start somewhere in the minor leagues, probably AA Bowie or AAA Norfolk, most likely Bowie because of where the Orioles are, before he would come back. considering he's just thrown a bullpen and they're thinking rehab start. The O's haven't locked in any kind of rotation for this weekend against the Phillies. They have for this week against the Braves. Earliest possible would be this weekend against the Phils. But again, if he's going to make a rehab start, Wednesday, I don't think you're going to start him Sunday. So I would say targeting more at the earliest sometime next week, you would think, for Dean Kremer to return from that tricep issue that took him out at the middle part of May. Now, speaking of this week's rotation, we do know, as was actually first reported by friends of the show over at Orioles on the Verge, that Cade Povich is getting a second start with the Orioles, made his major league debut in Toronto on Thursday, was okay, had his ups and downs, but the Orioles didn't option him to AAA, keeping him in the rotation for now, and he is lined up to start game 2 against the Braves. That will be Wednesday night. It'll be a couple of, actually, if you are a Nebraska Corn fan, you are going to be locked in to Wednesday's game. 2 rookies, Spencer Schwellenbach making his 3rd big league start, Cade Povich making his 2nd big league start. Both were stars at Nebraska. Schwellenbach a little bit older than Povich, but both studs for the Cornhuskers. That is going to be a fun game for Big Red Nation to be watching that one on Wednesday night. But Povich getting another start, which is cool to see. Now, Hyde talked about it Monday and still said that he's not like fully committed. Like this isn't a 6-man rotation for the long haul. They're just trying to get guys extra days. We saw how good Kyle Bradish was over the weekend when he got a couple of extra days of rest. And a wrench into this plan is going to be, if Dean Kremer does return next week, you're not going to a 7-man rotation. So somebody's losing their spot. And you would think, unless Povich is absolutely dominant the next 2 starts, it's probably Povich going back to AAA. It's the easiest move to make. But when Kremer comes back, you really have to make the decision. Okay, do you still want to keep a 6-man rotation in this tough June with only 1 off day? Or do you want to option Povich and move Albert Suarez back to the bullpen again and go back to that more classic 5-man rotation? I think the O's will have kind of a couple of decisions to make there with Dean Kremer, but definitely agree with the stance to give Cade Povich another spot in this rotation. And then the final piece of news from Monday, kind of outside all of these injuries and players on the field, is the Orioles officially made a deal with T. Rowe Price for a jersey patch. It was in the new CBA a couple of years ago that teams could sell ad space on the sleeves of their jerseys. It's not really sure where we're at. It seems like maybe 10 to 15-ish teams right now in Major League Baseball have the jersey patches on the sleeves, and the Orioles made it official on Monday. The patches will debut tonight, Tuesday, against the Braves when they come back home. T. Rowe Price, a Baltimore-based investment company, they're moving into a brand new space sometime this year or next year that is downtown. They've been based in Baltimore the whole history of the company. It's an investment firm, something I don't really have a lot of understanding about, but it's a fairly national and international company at this point. Now, the reporting from the Baltimore Banner and Andy Koska from earlier this year was that the T. Rowe Price was actually in talks to potentially acquire the naming rights to become T. Rowe Price Park at Camden Yards, potentially. But that deal was being negotiated with John Angelos, and then it fell through when news came out he was going to sell. David Rubenstein apparently came back in, picked back up the negotiations, but not for the naming rights of the stadium, instead for the sleeve patch. I'll tell you right now, I'd rather not the stadium be named a corporate sponsor. I like that it's Oriole Park at Camden Yards. I know a lot of people are worked up about the jersey patch, like, oh, it's distracting, it's got blue on it, it's not colors of the Orioles. I will give my personal opinion on the jersey patches. As long as it's not some sort of extremely offensive company, which you can have your thoughts about, like investment banking, but it is Baltimore-based company. I guess that's nice. Unless it's, a company that's truly doing heinous crimes, like I don't really care. It does not move the needle for me either way. I watched a solid amount of, soccer and some WNBA, and that's a place where you see ads on the jerseys all the time, and it kind of just looks natural in that way. Now, maybe you could say, well, that's the problem. We don't want the corporations taking over like that. And I totally get that. But this is just not something that moves the needle for me. I just don't get worked up about it. It's okay if you do. It just, if you're asking for a take on it, I don't really care, to be honest. The O's will have a jersey patch from here on out. But we do have one more thing to get to here on today's episode, and that is the winner of our giveaway. Ran a contest all of last week. Drum roll, please. Excuse me. We got the winner of the Great Eights hoodie. We will announce it coming up after this. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. Heck of a time in sports right now. Summertime, of course, means baseball, but it also means the NBA Finals and more. And you can bet it all on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet everything from the Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. And if you're looking at the NBA Finals, listen, the Boston Celtics are up 2-0. They look to be in complete control, but maybe there's good value on the Mavericks right now, so you could do that as well. But either way, you can visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. That is at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So to finish off today's episode, we got to announce the winner of our giveaway from last week to celebrate me reaching over 7,000 subscribers here on the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. Wanted to do another giveaway, as I've done for every 1,000 subscribers that I have reached. And we decided to do a giveaway of the Great Eights hoodie. I've been showing it off on last week's episodes. Basically, it's got kind of the silhouettes of Lamar Jackson, Alex Ovechkin, and Cal Ripken Jr. on the back with a Maryland flag 8 on the front, designed by my guy Chris Ruley. If you didn't win the hoodie, that's okay. You can get your own. You can buy one over at route1apparel.com at their shop. Definitely check it out. Go get yourself a shirt, a hoodie. There's some other gear with the Great Eights on it. But I did want to announce the winner of the giveaway. Now, the way you entered, you had to do two things. One, you had to subscribe to the Locked On Orioles podcast on YouTube. And if you still haven't done it already, please do it, because we're now on the road for 8,000 subscribers. And when we get there, we will do another fun giveaway. But then you also had to leave a comment on any of the 5 episodes on YouTube from last week, just giving me your honest feedback on the podcast. I wanted positive, negative, anything in between, just giving me your feedback on what you thought. I got a great amount of comments, well over 200 entries in the giveaway. You love to see that. And congratulations to our winner, who is Travis Golden. That is Travis Golden 2978 is the YouTube name. But congratulations to Travis, randomly selected as the contest winner. Travis, you have won the Great Eights hoodie. Make sure to shoot me an email, lockedonorioles@gmail.com. Again, that is lockedonorioles@gmail.com, Travis, to claim your prize. Wanted to read out Travis's comment because I thought it was pretty good, and also something I wanted to address on the podcast anyway. Travis says, "Loved the show. I've been listening every day since the beginning of last season. My only real feedback," and I left this in a comment last year, "is you occasionally pull off the mic, which makes your audio levels inconsistent. If you could stay on your mic more consistently and keep your levels more consistent, that would be awesome. We want to hear what you have to say, so when your levels drop, it's a bit of a bummer. Much love and keep up the great work." Honestly, as a constructive criticism feedback, I absolutely love the way that was written, and thank you, Travis, for the feedback. And congratulations on winning the hoodie. Again, shoot me an email to claim your prize. Now, I did want to, in 2 ways, kind of thank you all for the feedback. Like this, I want to be transparent on this podcast. Like, I do this show partially because I love talking about the Orioles and I love the Orioles, but I also do this show to help better inform people. And I've talked about this a little bit on the show, but like, there's a lot of different ways you can do a sports podcast. There's a lot of different ways you can do a team-centric podcast. It probably pigeonholes me a little bit that, I'm doing 5 days a week, 30 to 40 minute episodes. So they're shorter. There's always a game to talk about. So there's just generally not as much room to be super, super creative. I'm trying to get you what you need to know on the games, the roster moves, everything like that. And I got a lot of positive feedback about, this podcast being the one place where you can find that consistently every single day. And I love having that consistency for the listeners as well. But I also would love to be able to, have time and show more personality and do some more fun things. And sometimes the off season, grades more space for that, which is nice to see. But my goal of this is to inform you, make you a more informed Orioles fan and a more informed baseball fan after you listen to or watch this show. And I hope I am doing so. Just to address kind of the pulling away from the mic, it's something I'm trying to work on. It's also something that's hard for me to work on. It's something I've talked about a little bit on the podcast, but I do suffer from a more minor case of Tourette's syndrome, which was a little more of an issue, not a huge issue, but a little more of an issue when I was younger. I've grown out of it a little bit as I've gotten older. But because of that, like if you watch the show on YouTube, you see my head bobbing around all the time as I talk. I kind of can't control that because of what's going on. I try to control it as best I can, but it's one of those things where you can't really control it. So that's one of the reasons why I will pull away from the mic. I'm trying to find the best way, microphone and audio wise, to combat that without just trying to hold my head in place while I record the podcast, but I appreciate the feedback, and it's something that I'm trying to work through the best scenario there to make the audio as good as possible. Also got some feedback about, the audio sometimes being a little lacking, or some glitching on YouTube when you watch the show. Sometimes that can be Wi-Fi, but usually I've actually kind of found it's my laptop. I am working off not the world's oldest laptop, but certainly not a brand new one. That is going to be changed fairly soon. It seems like probably by the All-Star break here, I might have a fairly new setup in terms of technology, which is going to make the audio and the video quality a whole lot better. So very excited about that. So did want to address that. And thank you very much for pointing out those things. And it's gotten a little worse, I think, over the last week or two. That has really pushed me into gear to especially upgrade the computer that I am recording this show on. And then really the last thing that I saw a lot of comments about in the feedback is just having more guests. I've talked about this as well. Just I work a 9-to-5 job besides this podcast. With the Orioles also being good, I want to recap every single game. The way I record, right after a game ends, record at night. It's really hard schedule-wise for me and guests to get other people on the show consistently. Now I'll do it from time to time when a big story breaks, maybe or around draft season. I'll get people on here, and I do have more guests in the off season, which is fun. And I'll definitely try to get more guests next off season because I know people really like when I can kind of bounce ideas off of others here on this show. But those were just some of the big ones that I wanted to address. And thank you all so much for the feedback, positive, negative, whatever it was. I truly appreciate you listening, truly appreciate you watching, and truly appreciate you sharing your comments and your feedback. And if you want to continue to do it in the future, do it. Comment right here on the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. Send me an email, again, lockedonorioles@gmail.com with any of your feedback on the show. It is always appreciated, not just when I am specifically asking for it in terms of a giveaway. Don't send it as much on Twitter. If you have noticed, the @LockedOnOrioles Twitter account still posting infrequently. That website's a nightmare, and I am mostly off of it at this point. So email, YouTube, where you can better reach me. But that'll do it for today's show. We are back tomorrow, of course, to recap game one between the O's and the Braves. Atlanta coming to town. Max Fried has been maybe one of the Cy Young frontrunners in the National League. He gets the ball tonight for the Braves, who are kind of slipping lately. Since the Ronald Acuna Jr. injury, tore his ACL, he's out for the year. Braves now just 35-28, just lost 3 of 4 to the Nats over the weekend. O's kind of getting them at the right time, and they'll send, hey, why not? Send him back out there. Albert Suarez back to the mound tonight in game one of a 3-game set. And then I'll be back tomorrow to recap game one between the Orioles and the Braves and get you any further updates we have on Dean Kremer, Jorge Mateo, and others. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.